gotta hear about Hell Week. I always ask the sales.
Sure.
So I always ask if it's the monster that they play it out to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. And I can say this, I've been through different selection courses in different branches, and Buds is definitely the most physically challenging. But Hell Week, there's nobody has anything like that.
Yeah.
And I can say that not just from going through it, but I was a first phase instructor as well for about 1.5 years. So I put multiple students through it, and the way that week is designed, I mean, it's to a T, like to bring you to break you,
yeah,
but to make you keep pushing. And they have it. I mean, even the amount of sleep that you get, which is 3.5 to 4 hours for the week, that is purposefully put in there because if you don't, you can die. It's because you're so cold and wet and just beat down. So yeah, I mean, it's
they've figured out the bare minimum.
Yeah, for sure. They try to mitigate as much risk of people getting killed or injured, but and the reality is, if you want a certain product, you got to have that that risk there, I believe.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's brutal. It's one of those evolutions where, I mean, it makes you push yourself to a certain point that you couldn't imagine that you'd ever be, and then keep going. By the end of it, you're a robot. You're like, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole point, to know that like you said, you want a certain product, you got to know you're getting those guys out of there. I just had this last class. I got one of my students, I won't say his full name, but one of those jiu-jitsu students, Joe, just graduated, and it made me super proud to know that specifically, like whatever he did through Buds and SQT, like just made me super proud of him that he made it through Hell Week. Even I haven't been through Hell Week, just know that he made it through that.
Yeah, Hell Week is the pinnacle. I mean, you can still get dropped afterwards. You still, I mean, Hell Week is the 4th week, I believe, and they might switch it back and forth between 4th and 5th week. And then you make it through that, and that's like what's in everybody's mind when you show up to Buds, like, oh, here it comes. And then afterwards, they call it Hell Week depression because you get walk week after. So you literally allowed to walk for a week, everywhere. Where in Buds, you're running everywhere you go. And you wear tennis shoes because everybody's just swollen and beat up. But you get this depression, like, okay, I just made it past this like hurdle, and I still have 4.5, 5 more months of this. And it does let up a tiny bit, but you are still under the gun for all physical standards, passing everything. And then each phase has its own like Hell Week type crucible. Like, second phase has pool competency, and that's a week. That's where everybody gets dropped as well. And then third phase is obviously you go out to the island for, I think, 3.5 weeks where you learn demo and shooting. You do land nav before that, but that at the island is another crucible because it's just you and whatever instructors are out there, and there's no babysitter.
Yeah.
What do you feel like mentally, physically? What is driving you in these times?
Man, like I always, that question gets asked all the time. Like, what does it take for somebody to make it through a program like that? And you can speak to that to any special operations selection.
Sure.
Right? They're all super tough.
Yeah.
I just think it's, one, looking back now, it's God. God had a plan for me. I don't know what drove me to go that route. It wasn't like something where I've heard a lot of other team guys, and they're like, it's something they wanted to do since they were, 8 years old. And that's, I literally woke up one day and was like, this is what I want to do. And I truly think that God was like, this is going to be part of your plan. And he just, I had an obsession. It was
just put that in your heart, like bird your heart to do that.
And I was obsessed. Like I didn't do any, like even when I was with the Marines, all I did was prep to go to Bud. So any off time I had, I was PTing, just smoking myself to prepare myself mentally. And I don't know, I couldn't, like, looking back now, I'm like, dude, I don't know where that drive came from. It had to be from God. Because
no doubt. Obviously we're all Christians here, no doubt. But I also find it interesting that your story and the kind of the hardships that you had as a kid. I know you said, and I'm not bashing your parents, I know they loved you, but there's obviously were some hardships and some frustrations, right? Chad, obviously your story, full of hardships as a child. Even, my story, I have a personal, we all have a story of like hardship.
Yep.
And it's like the person that can take that story and make it like an ability to become resilient, which is what this show is all about, to like harness the lessons that you learn in that to build a strong mind, body, spirit, and social environment. Those are the guys that can go and do things like what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
And so I'm like, the hardships, I got to believe that, like kids need consistency and structure. And so you found that in the military and you thrived off of it. Maybe not because you didn't entirely have that as a kid, but there was obviously some of that missing at some point. And so, psychologically and behind the veil and even through the Lord, the way he's working in your life at that moment, he's using these things in your life that most people would use as a victim story to be like your hero story.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, that's, I think what a lot of the guys that go into special operations have in common is they all come from some sort of traumatic background that they were able to build resiliency off that, and then just broaden that resiliency going to the special operations community. Like just keep going and keep pushing themselves. And I think, that's definitely a huge part. There
is a lot of guys in special operations that like had either like traumatic childhoods or states of rebellion, and just like facing rebellion in your life,
or tragedies like loss of life and stuff like that. I mean, you just always hear that, or lack of parents, lack of presence with parents.
And it's the guys that are able to take that and then keep pushing forward. And that's what I was, my son's in wrestling right now. My youngest, he's a freshman, and he got worked all year. He made varsity as a freshman, and then went through the gauntlet, but. I was thinking, I'm like, dude, it's funny when I went through BUD/S, like you have all sorts of different guys that show up. You have like, athletes that are like gifted down to, a guy that weighs 145 pounds. And there's no rhyme or reason of like who's going to make it through or not. Actually, a lot of the gifted athletes end up quitting because they've been gifted their whole life.
Never experienced failure.
No, and you're going to experience failure there, and they're going to find your weak spot where you have this 145, 150 pound kid who has been beat down his whole life, who has probably last picked on teams, but he keeps trying. That is a place where he thrives because he's already has that mentality. Like, I know I'm going to get beat, but I'm going to keep going, and that's what they want. Like, that's what they're looking for a lot of times. Is great. It's great that you're gifted and whatever, but we want to see you at your lowest and are able to keep performing.
Yeah. When you're broken, you're still going to get up and do the job that needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's what's required in combat.
I have actually a pretty good story about like what you're looking for. When I was a first phase instructor, we had this guy show up and he was like this. I mean, I don't even think he was 130 pounds. I couldn't believe somebody had let him into the program. He looked like a little kid, couldn't do 4 or 5 pull-ups, and just got beat. I mean, we were on top of him as instructors. Like the class didn't like him. He made it to Hell Week, and during Hell Week, he was so short we had to put dive blocks on his helmet so he could actually have the boat on his head.
I had a hole on top of my head from because everybody has on their shoulder and has the chafing in their shoulder.
Oh yeah,
I had a little hole on top of my head from the boat.
Oh yeah, you get that soft spot up there. But this kid Wednesday ended up just crashing. Like he fell down face first. And I was a medic, so I went up, checked him out, threw him in the ambu, and he had completely sheared his femur off. Like it broke completely.
What?
And so the doctor was like, he's done, like for life. Like he's never going to be able to like properly walk again. But he's like, he fractured this 2 days ago, and he's been running on this the whole time, not complaining, and just literally dropped from that injury. I ended up going to the hospital and giving him, so after Hell Week, you're allowed to wear a brown t-shirt that separates you from the rest of the BUD students. It's a big thing everybody covets, right?
Yeah.
And so, I went and gave him a brown t-shirt because I'm like, dude, that his heart and what he had in him is exactly what we're looking for. His body just wasn't able to take it. But that's the type of individual that we're looking for.
Guys, I'm a lifelong athlete. I've tried all kind of things, from every different diet, from all different supplements, tons of different things to make my body as healthy and as functional as possible. I heard about BioPro years ago from jiu-jitsu athletes, from UFC fighters, and they're all friends of mine who I trust that were telling me, you have to try a BioPro, and I did. I experienced a tremendous result, mostly in my sleep, to where I was sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, to where I immediately went to sleeping 9 hours a night. BioPro has helped my recovery, my mental focus. I am a believer. I love it, or I would not be promoting it. If you're interested, go to bioproteintech.com and get yours